All right, I just had a totally awesome night of Northern Lights shooting. I finally got all my pictures edited, and I figured I'd just give you a nice little tour of all of my shots that I got. It was April 19th, 2018 in Central Washington. The show started about 9:45. This is the first shot I took. I just ran out and drove about 2 or 3 miles away from my house and grabbed this one. And then I headed east and got over to Road, V or something, Road V Southeast. And got on this old country road, and it was really starting to pick up. This is about 10 o'clock p.m. Here's a good shot I got at 10 p.m. And then I think, yeah, I got a wider one of that as well. And then I took a couple steps out into the field and got a nice lineup straight down the field. And it was really peaking. This is 10:01. And then I got a second shot of it just for fun. And then from there I drove out to a granary that's out in a small little town. I mean, this is literally the town right here of Roof, Washington. And I got a picture of this granary that's there, and the Northern Lights just perfectly spanned this thing. It was amazing. I was freaking out when I saw how perfect it was, how big it was. And yeah, this is about 10:12. It started to really kind of picked up for the night about 10:12, 10:10. For the first half of the show. I mean, it picked up again later on. I'll show you that here in a second. And then I just drove down the road to get a little bit further out into the country and got a nice panorama. And it was starting to weaken off. And when it weakens off, it kind of starts to squiggle a lot more. And I love it. There's my new Facebook profile background. And then I got one over the road. And then, this is at 10:19, and then I actually made a small time lapse of it at about 10:25. Here's a small time lapse of it moving. A few planes flying through. It wasn't very active. It was kind of weird. It would go, here it is again. It'd go up and down, and it's kind of a up and down type of storm. But from here, then I decided to head out to these old barns, so I took off and flew out, and my buddy, he was out there. There's these old barns out, about 20 miles east of my house. And I ran out and just got one shot in front of it, and then I went behind it and got another shot. This is about 11:15. It's really starting to pick up. And then I went inside that old barn. It's kind of falling apart. Every time I go in there, I risk my life a little bit. But I got inside there and used my cell phone camera flash and just made a nice little flash on the inside. And then I got the lights through it. I kind of like the view. It's kind of neat. It was about 11:20. And then 11:22, I just stepped outside the barn again and took another panorama. And it was really just awesome, awesome colors. Really kind of neat. And then from there I went over, I got a little bit wider view of the barn, that's right, a little wider view of the barn. It was really starting to pick up there for the first half. This is the before midnight show, about 11:25. And then on this same property there's an old farmhouse. I went and, got a shot behind that too. And then from there I went off, and the farmhouse is off to the left. I ran just to get in the car to head out to another spot. And I got a 3-shot panorama of it. This is 11:30. And then from here I went over, I went over to this old barn just about a mile down the road from that other one. And I walked pretty far away from it and I zoomed in and got a nice shot of it because the storm was starting to die out. It's about midnight now. This is a midnight shot. And then I got a little bit further out shot of it. And I hooked up my buddy let me use his wide angle, and I got a really wide shot of it. But see, there's a zoom in shot of it, which is kind of cool. And then it was pretty neat. And this was about 12 o'clock, and the storm was starting to die down. And we walked back to our cars, and I grabbed a quick shot of it. With the Milky Way. It's kind of over it, but it's not. The full Milky Way wasn't up yet, but you can kind of see the Milky Way stars through it, and I thought that was kind of cool how it was arching over it. And then this was about 12:15, and then I got home. I drove home because I was hungry. It was time for some grub. I got home at about 12:30, and I ran back outside about 12:55. It was close to 1 o'clock, and the storm was kind of dying out. I figured it was done for the night, and I wasn't gonna wasn't going to do anything else, but then I looked at the forecast and it said that the storm was picking up again. So I'm like, well, I might as well head back out. And here, I'm going to give you a little rundown of the barns. At my house, this is about 20 miles from my house. There's barn here, a barn here, this old farmhouse, I call it the haunted house. And there's a round top barn here, and then there's a windmill and a barn out here. And I got this, and I've shot Milky Ways over all of these barns before. And I got this master plan, like, all right, I'm going to go hit every one of these barns. I'm going to try and put a Milky Way over every one of them with the Northern Lights behind it. So I got there, and the Milky Way was just barely starting to come up, and I threw a big old panorama over it. Got the Milky Way, the Northern Lights, panorama, and it was awesome. Over a barn that I call Drama King. And there's the barn and there's an old house. So after I got this shot, I went behind the barn and just got a nice, the storm was really starting to pick up again. And then I went from there and ran over to the house, and now the storm's starting to pick up a little bit more. It's starting to kind of eat into the Milky Way a little bit. And then from this old house, I went over to another barn that was about a mile down the road, and I got this one, and I really, really like this one. I called it my masterpiece when I first saw it because it was just so cool. I mean, just how it just comes in and kisses the back of that barn, and then we got this big, full Milky Way over it, and then the Milky Way just dies on the inside of it, and it's just, that was one of my shots of the night. I love that shot. And then I got a shot of the little grain bin next to it just because, as an interlude. And then I drove over to that old haunted house, which is next on my route. And right as I got out of the car, I looked out and I saw the storm was just picking up huge, really starting to get strong. So I fired off a big panorama of it real quick out over some rolling hills. Wasn't the best spot to get a panorama, but I got one. And then I went over to the old haunted house. That's what I call him. I got the Milky Way, and then the storm was so strong that it ate half the Milky Way. It just cut it off. So I call this one yin and yang because it's just, you got half and has just a tale of two pictures all in one. You got that full Milky Way that just gets destroyed by the Northern Lights, and you got this full, massive Northern Light storm, and it's just such a cool picture. I really, really love this picture. I mean, just an absolutely phenomenal night. I can't even describe how cool it was. And then I went and got another panorama of it right at its peak. This is as heavy as it was. It was just this big old spires, purple spires coming up off the top, and you could really see it out there. I was out in the middle of a really dark place, and just amazing. And then from that barn, I took off and got in the car and drove off to the round top barn. And you can see the storm starting to die out a little bit. But I got a Milky Way panorama over that. And, started to die off a little bit, but still cool to get the Milky Way and the Northern Lights and a barn all in one. And then I got a quick little shot of that. And then just down the road on the way to that barn, I saw an old tractor. So I figured, why not? And I got a picture of the tractor with the Northern Lights behind it. Used my cell phone flash and lit up the tractor and got a picture of that. And then from there, I drove off to the windmill. And there's an old windmill and barn. And I got a shot over that. And the Northern Lights are really dying out there. This is about 3:30. They peaked at about 2:45. This is 3:30 in the morning. I started shooting from about 1:50 to about 4 o'clock in the morning. This is at 3:30. And then I went over and got one over the barn, and you can see that the lights are just about dead. But I think that's it. Yeah, that was my epic night of shooting. I got all of these just amazing panoramas with the Northern Lights. 7 of them. 7 full panoramas with the Northern Lights over these houses and barns. And I was just a crazy, crazy, awesome night. I mean, look at that. I just can't even, it was just so phenomenal. That was my night.